Hi, today on Conversations We Needed with Our Parents Growing Up, we're going to talk about the everyday life stuff nobody taught me.
Yeah, so we had a listener write in, I would have appreciated conversations about neutral things we take for granted, like writing a check or restaurant etiquette. Yeah, which I think is a very interesting question.
Yes.
As we as we started diving into that. And so, for me, when I think about, oh gosh, I know this may sound exaggerated, but we are very complex, that if I don't know these practical things that I feel like everybody else knows, but I don't know, then do I belong in this place?
Right, so I didn't even want to go and
Right.
avoid.
Avoid, right.
I hate nice restaurants.
Right, right.
That's just, they're
Right.
snobs, not my thing.
Yeah, or I don't know, because I don't know how to, write a check. I don't know how to pay an appropriate tip. I don't know how. There's so many things that I think about around this topic.
Make a budget,
Yeah, right.
pay bills on time. Yeah.
Yeah, the process around all
Right.
of that. Yeah, and that us asking questions about these things as adults is really good and human and helpful, as opposed to avoiding it, which we often do. Yeah, I think it's really helpful to give ourselves some grace when we feel like we should know something that we think everybody else knows and we don't know. And maybe they didn't know either and they learned it themselves. I think there's probably I know there's a lot of like how-to videos on YouTube that people go and access,
Well, yeah.
like, how to change a tire, how to tie a tie. And and I think that is something that gets left out, as a parent, like myself, for sure, there was an assumption that my children were learning just by observing me.
Right.
Which was not true, but it was something that I know that I held in there. And then there were things that I taught them. Like I remember, for instance, like Luke wanted to go into Lamar's Donuts. He wanted to buy a donut. And I think he was like 8 years old. And I just said, I'll go with you, but you're going to order it. And he was like, And I was like, it's okay. You can go up and ask for what you want and it'll be okay. And that for him was really frustrating, but I was trying to teach him that he was competent to do that. And so I think when we are not taught practical things as children, it can increase our likelihood of developing imposter syndrome, because we're sitting there thinking, again, that everybody else knows, but I don't know. So everybody's going to find out that I don't know. And we carry that story along. So, why do you think parents may have avoided it? I know I mentioned that I just thought my kids were watching me and learning. What else do you think?
Well, I think just many of us are on autopilot and we're just struggling to make it through ourselves, right? And so we're not even aware that that's something that maybe we should spend more time in an appropriate way to teach our children. Because I'll share some. I'm thinking through all this. It's impactful just because I was taught in very shaming ways, and I most recently even had somebody shame me over a manners issue, and I think that I've got pretty good manners because of the way I was raised, but. It was a correction that was accurate, but it's exactly the way that a family member would have done it to me.
Yeah. Not helpful.
Yes, so I'm having dinner with this group of people, and she had multiple courses, and it was like, which utensil to use. Typically, the fallback is from the outside in, right? And but then they throw the dessert fork up top. But whatever, if I'm even right about that. But it doesn't matter. It was a simple thing of would you like some more? And I said, no, thank you, I'm good. And another person at the table said, well, it's not a moral question. And said my father was, from England and was very formal, and that's what he was said. And of course, I'm feeling shame inside. I'm like, gosh, I'm 57 years old, and she's right. But that's exactly what my father, grandfather, not my father, but my father would have said.
Not
And there
helpful.
probably would have been better ways. And, just other things that come to mind, babe. It's just this one has triggered me just in the prep of it. But if you put your elbow on the table, my mom might say it once or twice even, and then you'd get smacked off the table. That sort of thing. And then I remember we went to breakfast when I was little. I don't know, maybe a bit 7. I mean, not super little, but 8. And we're ordering, and I was very shy, and I didn't know there was too much input going on at the table, and it got to me. The waitress was trying to be sweet, all that, and I just said egg. And my dad could have handled that in many different ways, like this, he didn't have to say it then in front of everybody. He could have just, done it a different time. I really want you to order the next time, and here's how, let's practice. Here's what you do. And if you're not sure, you can even just say, well, what would be good? What would you recommend? As when I was little, so what would be good would have been a nice way to do it, but practicing. Instead, I got shamed at the table.
Yeah.
And because he was embarrassed, and so not present other than himself, he was embarrassed, and so gosh, I can't believe I've got a kid who's acting like he doesn't know what's going on, and so he's like egg. And I don't remember what the rest of the words were, but they weren't kind, right?
Right.
And all I'm doing is sharing that to show examples of the simple things that we encounter in life that as a parent we may have been treated that way. And there's just so many better ways to have practiced with our children. And one would be when we go to the restaurant tonight, I want you to know you're going to order for yourself tonight. Okay. It's a big responsibility. You can do it. And then however it comes out, it's good. Hey, would be much more effective and affirming all those things. I wouldn't still be carrying shame, because obviously there still is some from egg, and it would have made things a lot easier. So I think it's really there are so many ways that we can step forward and help our children be prepared to engage in life with manners or basic functions like writing checks by sitting down in a non-stressful time to do it. If we set aside a moment.
Yeah.
But that takes
Intentionality.
and it takes time, and those things are hard as parents. But if you're interested in doing it better or as best as you can, then trying to set aside the time to do that is important.
Yeah, I think if we're not taking the time, we're not being curious, we as children can misinterpret maybe our parents wanting us to develop independence, but we're experiencing it as abandonment. Let me say that again. If we're not taking the time to teach our children basic life skills, we may be hoping that they experience it as our desire for them to build independence, but their interpretation is that we are abandoning them.
Right.
And then they feel...
I was on my own. I had to figure it all out by myself. Right.
Yeah. Right.
And it's a balance as a parent to decide, when. And I think there are times when you do need to let your child, just they have to learn how to flap their wings at some point, and it's so painful sometimes. And then it's how you handle it, either in the moment or shortly afterwards, that can make all the difference between independence and empowerment and abandonment and shame.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Another one
So,
comes to mind really quick, and
yeah.
that is checkbook. And I know that a lot of people don't go through the process of balancing a checkbook, but running a budget and understanding where your money is a really important basic
Absolutely.
skill, especially when you're starting out. And the way that I knew one of my friend's parents did it was to throw a tirade about, well, you haven't even touched balanced the checkbook at all, which is basically just tracking, every piece of that comes in and every piece that goes out, so you know where you are down to the penny. And then once a month, forcing their child to sit down at the table while the parent balanced a checkbook and made a big deal about errors. And it was just
Choices,
totally
right.
shaming and scary. And so and it was that parent was trying to teach,
Right.
right? But
Trying
through
to.
shame and fear and being upset that and now it's a bother, just all those things. And we are human after all.
Right.
But it's just so important because when you create avoidance like that, then what do you think ends up with the child later?
Right.
Completely avoiding around money.
Right.
Don't even want to know about that.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah. So thinking that, what are we asking for? What is the listener asking for? Going back to teach me how the world works as best you know, because we don't know it all, even if we think we do.
Right.
But teach me how the world works so that I can feel like I belong in it. Also showing me that it's okay if you don't know.
Right.
And saying that, looking it up together.
Yes, let's find out.
Let's find out. Let's explore. Let's experiment.
And
Right.
acknowledging that we are not perfect as parents, and you don't have to put yourself down in that process, but let's find out together. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really empowering experience
Right.
versus either avoidance or a mess, right?
Right. Yeah. I think about walking my kids through preparing their tax returns, as they've gotten
Sure.
older, right? So they feel competent to do those now, right? But sitting down with them and explaining it to them, walking them through it, a few years in a row so that they can do it now on their own. That they want to feel competent. They want to feel confident as best they can, and that being curious and learning, even when you're an adult, there's nothing to be ashamed of about that there's always more for us to learn. So normalizing learning out loud. No one ever showed me how to do this. Again, let's figure it out together,
Right.
like you mentioned earlier. Having conversation. What's something that you wished I had showed you earlier? We can talk about it now.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. Yeah.
The one that comes to mind too. My grandfather taught me how to check the air pressure in a tire. I was scared to death to put the
thing on there
thing
to
on
measure.
the tire. I thought I was sure the tire was going to explode, and he did a really nice job. And that was a simple. You're in the moment. He wants the air checked in the tires, but he was not so busy and so distracted that he just forced through the issue and did it himself, or got angry when I was afraid, etc. He handled it really nicely and taught me.
Nice.
And taught me why it was important in the process. And so I think as parents, even just those simple moments of, hey, we're at a restaurant and it's time to do the tip. Let me tell you what I'm doing.
Right. Right.
Here's how I evaluate, whether I'm going, why do we give a tip? And here's how I decide the amount. And here's how I do a quick calculation of
Right.
15% if I
Right.
like 15%.
Right.
So anyway, there's lots of moments that are teaching opportunities if we choose to take them.
Right. Right. And you don't have to do it the same way that I do it. This is just the way that I do it. Right.
Nice point. Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. This is what's important to me about this thing. Yeah. So the conversations, why they matter. When we're an adult, we can often feel, again, embarrassed that we don't know things, which then perpetuates shame and avoidance behaviors. I think you addressed that earlier. We can equate our worth with competence. And so if I don't know, then, there must be something wrong with me. And that if we don't feel competent, I know this can be difficult to take in, but that we can generalize that into other areas of our life, even relationally. And so if I don't know how to balance a checkbook, then I'm probably not good at other things, right? And so it can increase our self-doubt. It's not helpful. And then we're overcompensating or isolating or whatever. Yes. So teaching.
Right.
Yeah. Why it matters today. We live in such an information culture.
Right.
And we are drowning in it. But who's teaching me? Who's sitting down with me? Who's helping me figure out how to make this work in my life? Because because it worked for your parent or it worked for your friend or it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So again, just trying to create space to have these conversations.
Well, agreed. And what teaches you more? What sticks more? The moment when a parent or a grandparent or trusted adult in your life took the time to personally show you, this is how I do this,
Right?
And this is why it matters, versus I looked it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And YouTube is great.
Yeah.
So is ChatGPT for I don't know how to do this, but having that connection piece,
Yes, absolutely.
it's really ultimately can make relationships so much deeper, right? My dad taught me, because I love it when my daughter's like, my dad taught me this, Like, yeah, I did.
Yeah, the relational aspect. Oh, it's all woven in there.
Yep.
And sometimes it is about information, and I just want the answer and the connection piece isn't necessary, but we're talking about this from a relational perspective. These are conversations we wish our parents had had with us growing up. Is not just about the practical part of it. It is the relational part that I feel worthy enough for someone to teach me. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then when they did teach me, I feel more confident and like I have this place in the world, more stable, all those things. It's such a small deal, but can mean so much.
Yeah.
Be such a big deal on the other side, And if we haven't, or we didn't do it well because we got angry in the teaching process or whatever, pick up the pieces and
come back to it.
Do it better the next time, because that's what parenting is. And it's an important job, and it's a hard job too. And staying away from our own shame in the process, I think, is important.
Yeah.
Another day.
Growing. Learning to regulate, to get grounded, so we can be present for the people in our lives as best we can. As best we can. Okay, so next topic coming up. I wish they saw who I truly was. And so that particular reader was wanting to understand from their parent what their parents saw in them as their strengths, talents, gifts. And so sometimes we can get information from our parents and we don't know what to do with it because we're not really sure if it's about us, if it's about what they want from us. And so this is a really direct conversation. So we look forward to the next time.
Be a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.